Everyone, my name is Joanna and I'm friends with NLP Dynamics. And Steve apparently is saying hello to all of us. He's at the airport, or maybe he's flying now. And today I thought that because it's the beginning of the year, and I'm not sure what you were doing actually on your December practice group, but because it's the beginning of the year, everyone is setting their goals, everyone is getting ready to make the 2014 another best year yet. So I thought it's a good topic to focus on. So the reason why I'll be talking about self-coaching and we'll be doing some exercise around it is because I thought it's actually quite an important topic within personal development. And personally for me, the reason why I have gone into personal development was this idea that when I learn all this knowledge, when I learn all the tools, I will be able to become almost a superhuman and create this wonderful life, and not only for myself but for other people. But very often I notice that much more I give more time to other people, and I'm really dedicated to their development, to their goals, in assisting them to basically go through their pathway, than really spending time on my own. So I've been experimenting with different tools, and the things that we'll be talking about today is something that I do, something that I have picked up from other people. Very simple tools. To some of them you don't really need much depth of NLP knowledge or any sophisticated techniques. They're very straightforward, and I'll just share them with you and I hope they will work for you. So previously I was in engineering and I was designing buildings, and basically I realized that when we were designing any building we would spend sometimes years. There was one project, King's Cross development, that I was working on, which took almost 10 years. There are other projects which are much smaller, but basically whatever project it is, we always go through many different phases of design. So we start from some sort of fluffy idea. We do like a feasibility study. We see what's possible and then what we actually want to create. And then we go usually through like 10 or 11 or even more, this depends on the size of the project and the type of the project, design stages, where we basically make it even more and more clear, and we go into details and we change them and we tweak it. And from that first fluffy idea, we then end up with like very precise, detailed plans. And it's only the end of the design stage, then that's when the implementation then starts, and those plans change because things come up, circumstances change, and basically what we end up at the end is very different to what we thought of at the beginning. And what I thought when I started working with people is that we spend so much time and we dedicate so much to the projects, for example at work, like I was for example, but we don't really always give that much attention and that much time and that much dedication to our lives. And our lives are really so much more important than any project. So throughout life we are being coached, and it starts from when we are very little. It starts from our family, from parents, friends, and then we go through friends that we play with, and then kids, and then people in schools, universities, and then friends and relationships and everything. All of that is some sort of coaching. So everything that you learn, and because you're here and you've gone through some sort of training, I know that you are the kind of people who take responsibility. At some point decided that, okay, I'm going to take my own development in my own hands and I'm going to take it a few steps further. So basically self-coaching is very much that, and all that knowledge that we pick up on the training courses, from the books, it's great to have it. And I often, when I read something, when I find out about something, I get very excited, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. But then I end up doing not much of it, and it's because sometimes there's too many ideas and they're all too good, and the evening is too short or the morning is too short. Or sometimes I kind of start doing it and I forget. So that's why these techniques, they're very simple. They may take very little time, but what I kind of invite you to do is to commit yourself to actually take really charge of what's happening with your life and how you are going about those goals, whether you already have goals or whether you will be working on them. And in a way, we already have a coach in our head. We've got that voice that talks to us very often. The only thing is that that voice is very often a very, very good critic and not necessarily a great coach. So when I compared how I speak to myself, not out loud, but kind of in my head, and then I compared how I actually speak to my clients when I coach them, it's completely different. And I was thinking, if I was that kind to myself as I am to them, if I was that good a coach to myself as I can be to them, I would be in a very, very different place. So basically, these are the techniques. So maybe some of you have done, have you maybe been trying to apply some of the things you learn? Yeah? And what benefits have you noticed of doing that?
Sorry, looking at me, I'm much happier in myself.
Yeah.
And people, how they respond to me is much more positive. And yeah, although sometimes I feel my energy slipping, I remind myself about how I felt when I was here training. And by doing that, by getting back into the feeling state that I had, it then revives me to carry on the way I am.
Yeah.
So I'm much, much happier in myself.
And that's a very important point, because I think in self-coaching we are really building relationship with ourselves, and that's the only relationship that is for life, really. Because I mean, there may be other relationships for life, but this is the one that is guaranteed. You are going to be with yourself for the whole life. So what I noticed is, even with me getting excited about different tools, different techniques, and then telling myself, oh, I will do this, I will do this, I will do this, then I wouldn't find time to it. Then I would kind of undermine myself in my head, because I haven't even kept the commitment that I've given to myself. So I would much more likely not do something for myself and give that time to something or someone else because I've promised them, but what I promised myself, I would have kind of ignored, thinking, oh, it's just me. But then unconsciously we get a message, oh, it's just me, and then we get the message, well, I can't even rely on myself. I can't even commit myself to something quite big and significant, because at the back of our head there will be that voice saying, well, but you haven't done this, you haven't done this, you haven't done this. So there is no one else that can actually help you with that than yourselves. It's really about doing those little things day by day. And sometimes we think that people who have achieved very high level mastery in any skill, they do God knows how sophisticated and complex and big things. But very often it's very different. Very often they do very, very simple things, very basic. They practice very basic practices, but religiously, and they do them and over and over and over and over again. So what I have promised myself is that all those plans that I have for 2014 with self-coaching, with spending that, for me it's the time in the evening. For you, it's whenever you can fit it in your day, evening, morning, whatever works for you. Maybe we actually should spend some time as part of today to see when you can actually do that, so that you can evaluate and make a plan that is really likely to happen, and not something that is going to be just an ambitious idea, but is actually going to be very, very hard to implement in your everyday life. So yeah, so that's about self-coaching. So maybe I'll just move on to those different. That's okay, just on time. So I'll move on to those. There's 3 strategies that I wanted to mention to you, and they really, really very simple. And I'll mention in which strategy, which NLP tools you can use, and we will spend some time practicing some of them here today. So I hope you'll be ready to kind of go on your own from tomorrow or even from tonight. So basically the first one is to, and that's something probably to do in the evening, it is to review your day. Very, very simple. And it doesn't have to take longer than 10 minutes. And what I would suggest is that if you have never done that before, I would even say dedicate an hour for the first time and look back at your whole life And you don't have to go into many, it's up to you how many details you go to. But if it's about creating your 2014, then maybe if there are certain areas you want to focus on in 2014, just look back at your lessons throughout your time up until now and make a note of them, record them somewhere so that you can actually refer back to them. But if we talk about doing a summary of the day on daily basis, it's basically to sit down somewhere where you can be comfortable and you can be you will not be disturbed for say 10 minutes or so. I can't spend that much time on it. And look back at your day from the beginning, from the moment when you opened your eyes and got up to that very point when you're sitting down. So you can, this is an exercise where you can use perceptual positions. So you basically sit back, you kind of imagine you're in a cinema, and you imagine that day, you're watching the movie of that day on certain screens. So you look at yourself from the outside. And there will be different things that happen throughout the day. So like I mentioned previously, we tend to be a very, very good critic of ourselves, but we not often a great coach or a great supporter of ourselves. So in this exercise, it is about noticing the things that have gone actually well. And if you have goals for the year, for the month, or even for the day, then you can review the day in context of those goals. So you look at how you've behaved, how you reacted, what happened, and you find things that you can kind of congratulate yourself for, that you can say, good job, even if it wasn't perfect, but you can say, great, well done, let's do that more often, so that you can kind of give yourself that clap on the back and take it further. And what I would encourage you in that summary is to take responsibility for whatever happens. So if, for example, you are looking back at your day and there was a situation where you were there was a situation involving other people or another person, doesn't matter how many, and it went a certain way and maybe you didn't like it, or maybe you did like it, then look at the situation, but also look at what specifically you have done that contributed to it developing in certain direction. So that's one part, looking at those things that have gone well, those things that in some way align with your goals, with your values, things that you could say are your highlights of the day. And then the other part, look at those things that haven't gone well. So the things that you wish have gone otherwise, but for some reason that's the way they happened. And look at them and really take a moment to think about how would you have wanted to behave if that kind of situation happened again. And again here, focus on yourself. Take responsibility for the situation that you're looking at and think about what was going on in that situation for you. So what were you thinking? What were you feeling? How you have interacted if that involved someone else? So basically this is when you can do a bit of a movie edit. So you go through your day, you get to that point which you were not really, really happy with for a number of reasons, or for one reason, and you cut that bit out and you create a new movie, again from the third position, you create another movie the way you would want it to be. And this is basically, like from NLP, visualizations, imagination, what we think, we're creating another neurological pathway in our system whenever we do that kind of exercise. So it is much more likely that when next time you are exposed to given context or given people or given kind of input, you will react in that way. And if you don't, that's okay. Edit the movie again and you'll do maybe better next time. There's that story about a man walking on the pavement and there was a hole. And the first time he walks and he falls down in the hole. So next time he walks and he sees the hole and he manages to not fall into it, but with great difficulty. The third time he walks and he manages to go around it very, very easily. And the fourth time, he just walks past it and nothing happens. So it's about making those very, very small improvements day by day or week by week and creating a bigger change overall. That's what coaching is about. So that's the first strategy. The second one is your internal conversation with your very own coach. So that coach, it can be someone that you know, someone that has ever coached you, someone who is in some way, some sort of, I don't want to use the word authority, but it's basically someone that you believe could be a good coach for you. So for example, I recently caught myself in a situation where I was thinking about loads of things that I had to do and I was getting overwhelmed, and I kind of had that tone of voice in my head, kind of, you know, when you feel sorry for yourself and you're just like, oh, and this and this and this and this. And just for an instant, there is someone who's coaching me, and I just saw his face. I kind of imagined that I'm actually saying those things out loud to him, and I imagined his face. I saw his giggle, I heard his giggle, and kind of smile, and what he would say to me, and instantly, and that was everything within my head, within a second, instantly, because of how he looked at the situation, the way I saw it completely changed. Because I was thinking, you're right, it's just ridiculous, it's just funny, and of course, because I was it doesn't matter really, the details doesn't matter. I tend to go on. But anyway, it can be someone that has ever coached you, someone who you know, so that you can literally, you can take two chairs, you can basically really play the character of that person. So within your NLP training, you've learned what it means to be in a second position. So whatever you know about that person, take it on. So think about, okay, so who am I? So I'm Bill. I'm 70 years old, I've experienced this and this and this, I've got that kind of knowledge. Get yourself into that role. So imagine that you are an actor in the theater, and you are playing the role of that person. And it can be even you in 20, 30, 40 years to come. So imagine how you would be, how... It can be, so everything is possible. So imagine how you would look like, how you would sound like, what you would have gone through in your life up until that point, and basically play that role, behave like that person, really get yourself into their shoes, really see and experience the world the way they experience, and see yourself sitting in that other chair the way they would see you. So, you know, and you can literally, you can move the chairs. You can go from your own chair to the chair of that person and have that kind of coaching conversation with you. And it's because, you see, in coaching, you get a person who can ask you sometimes very simple questions. But because that person is outside of your thoughts, outside of your world, they can see things very differently. So our imagination is a very powerful tool. Our minds are a very powerful tool. And sometimes we spend much more time in life reading instruction on how to use a fridge or some sort of equipment, but we don't really appreciate what we've got in here. So the same way, like, I thought about this particular person, and within a second I heard his voice, I saw his face, I heard his giggle, and my state changed. This is exactly what you are meant to do with yourself. And maybe at the beginning it will take time for you to kind of get used to being that coach, but then maybe you will be able to do it on the train, wherever you are. I was actually in the bathroom when so it can happen really anywhere, and you can train yourself to be able to do just that. So that's and at the same time, you already have got a lot of knowledge. So when you are being that other coach, you are using your own knowledge, you are using their perception of the world, their experiences, their view, and you use all of that to coach yourself. And the last one is A to B. And that's very simple as well. You basically, that's a little bit more physical way of doing, of coaching yourself. You basically take three pieces of paper, A, B, and C. So on a sheet A, you write everything. For example, if you want to focus on changing something in your professional context, so you take a sheet of paper and you write whatever is the state of the situation at the given time, at the present time. So basically, if I was looking at my professional context, I would write what I'm doing now, how do I feel about it, how do I even value it? If I was to judge it in a scale from 0 to 10, where would I place myself? How satisfied I am? How much money I'm earning? What am I doing? How do I feel about it? What's important for me? Everything that basically is significant for you in that context in the present time. And it's not something you have to do, this one, it's not something you have to do at once. You can keep adding to it. And because it's a kind of physical and visual process, you will kind of see why it can be done over time. So on a sheet of paper A, you write whatever is the state of the situation now. And then you create another one, and that's your B. And you can put them as far away from each other as possible. And B is basically what you want it to be. So what is your goal? And we will go into goals in a minute. You probably have done during your NLP training well-formed outcomes. So we will, on that sheet of paper, on that sheet B, you basically put down what outcome you want in that given context. What is it that you want instead of what you've got at the moment? And basically you walk between A to B, and as you walk between A and B, you can actually ask someone for help with that, or again you can coach yourself. But you go through what has to really happen, what has to change, what do you need to do, who do you need to speak to, everything that comes to your mind, everything that you manage to get out of yourself by asking yourself some good coaching questions, so that you can go from A to B. And you can use, if you talk here about something that you are not satisfied with, then here go to what would you be satisfied with, and what do you think has to happen in between A and B in that part of your outcome for you to basically go through that route. So whatever you manage to come up with between A and B, you put on the third sheet of paper, which is sheet C. And when you're done, and you can do it a number of times, and you can ask other people for input, you can step outside, and you can again from third position look at A, look at B, and brainstorm with yourself. What do you see? What do you see in state A? What do you see in state B? And maybe you may be able to see something that you walking in between haven't seen. So you add that. You add everything to that sheet in between, and you basically put it in between A and B. And that's it. Very simple. We'll do that. Do you remember, and do you use that? Do you use the well-formed outcomes in your planning, in your goal setting? The reason why it's called well-formed outcomes, well-formed conditions for outcomes, is because that's what makes it much more easy for you to actually achieve them. All those, if you think about the goals that you have, and you kind of go through those conditions and see, do I actually tick that box? Do I tick that box? Do I tick that box? It is much more likely that you will achieve it. And the reason is that within those conditions, there is you taking responsibility, there is you getting really clarity about what that B is, what is it that you want. And sometimes, and that very often comes up in coaching with people, and I have that with myself as well, sometimes I haven't got that clarity, and I need to spend sometimes hours, sometimes weeks, sometimes I leave it and I come back to it a couple months later because I go through some sort of process. So these conditions, they also help you the way they help you form your goals is so that you increase your motivation towards actually making it happen. So the first one is that your goal has to be stated in positive. So for example, going back to my professional situation, if I stay here and I'm saying I'm not happy, I'm not happy, then my goal, if I said my goal is to stop being unhappy, then that's kind of not really specific at all. It doesn't tell me anything about where I actually want to be. So it has to be stated in positive. So instead of saying I don't want to feel scared, I don't want to feel sad, I don't want to feel unsatisfied, you ask yourself, okay, so if that's what is now, what do you want instead? The second one is initiated and maintained by self. So for example, if you create a goal and the goal is I want my friend to be nice to me, then that's basically not a goal, that's just a wish for someone to do something in relation to you. So you have to turn that goal again back on yourself and keep asking yourself, okay, so if I want my friend to be nice to me, then what would I be doing so that they're nice to me? So taking responsibility, how you can get that outcome that you want by doing something from yourself. Specific sensory description of outcomes and steps. So again, going back to my job situation, if I'm saying I want to be satisfied, then how would I be feeling the satisfaction? How would I know, and how would the coach know that I'm satisfied? So it really gets you to think, how do you even know that you are satisfied? So it gets you to break down your own experience. The fourth one, more than one way to get the outcome. That one is about flexibility. So if we want to achieve, for example, lose weight, then if I say, okay, I'm going to go on a diet, but we know that you can lose weight in so many different ways. So in NLP, we've got the concept of behavioral flexibility. So if you've got a certain goal, you're taking certain action to achieve that goal, but you're not achieving it, then maybe there's something about what you do that you could change. So it is about making it easier for yourself to really brainstorming what are possible ways of achieving that goal. And sometimes it is through kind of brainstorming with yourself. Sometimes it is about learning from other people, asking, observing, doing some sort of research. First step is specific and achievable. When, for example, sometimes I coach people and they say, well, I'm gonna use my time well during the day, or I'm gonna get up early. So it's whatever it means to them early. Maybe they have got a certain time in their mind, but as a coach, I want to know when they're achieving the goal or not. So you basically are breaking it down through asking questions, and you may remember some meta-model questions, basically how specifically, what specifically, when specifically. These very simple questions help you make your goals very specific, and then you end up with the same way like as if you went to the shop and had a shopping list. These are the things that I'm getting. The same way you want to have your outcomes clarified so that you are crystal clear that this is what I'm doing first, these are the resources that I'm going to need to get, this is how I'm feeling now, this is how I'm going to feel when I get it. It has to be crystal clear, and these questions will help you make it happen. Increases choices. So you want the goals, you want your outcomes to be able to increase your choices. Ecological, that basically means that it's good for your wider systems. So for example, if you've got a certain goal, but you know that, for example, if you are a mother and you've got a family to look after, and you set the goal that you are going to commit yourself to that much and that much time somewhere completely else, that's going to have an impact on other people, and possibly it's going to make achievement of that goal impossible because the two will not be able to work together. So you check how that would actually work. Is it going to be good for me? Is it going to be good to those parts of my life or those other people in my life who are important? How is it going to affect? So you're trying to basically get a broader view on how it fits, because if it doesn't fit, it's gonna be put aside and it's not gonna happen. It's basically not a great outcome at all. I would like you to get into PERS, and we've got a nice number of people. Get into PERS and choose which even one only of those strategies you would like to learn how to do and start doing. Which one do you think could be of most benefit to you? And with the other person, help each other, coach each other in doing them. So for example, the first strategy was about doing the summary. So you can sit down with the other person, the one that you will be in pair with, and go through today's day and tell them what you see, what you have experienced. And when you come across those things that you were satisfied with, what lesson can you take from it? And those things that you would like to change, how would you like to make them instead? How would you like to make them instead? And that person, the person who's helping you, basically can help you with some questions, create what you want instead, so that when you are doing the whole process by yourself, you're a little bit more fluent with it. So it's just to go through those strategies and see if you understand. The second one was conversation with the internal coach. So again, if you decided, okay, this is the strategy that I want to be using daily, then maybe you ask the other person to help you really get into the position of that coach. So maybe they can ask you, so who are you? How do you see the situation? Tell me about yourself, to really help you put yourself into the shoes of the coach and create that persona of the coach. And you can do the same to the other person. And with this one, I would say that that's really very much about clarifying those outcomes. So if you don't really know what you want to achieve, whether this year, this month, this week, or tomorrow, then maybe go through that exercise of creating a well-formed outcome at least once. And here you've got Maggie and myself, and you've got each other to ask each other, so that when you ever go through any planning, any thinking about the goals, you are using that strategy because it's really, really worthwhile. So it's up to you to choose whatever you would want to work with on a daily basis. And I would just encourage you to try to help yourself learn those processes. And if you have any questions, ask myself, ask Maggie, Maggie. and yeah. And intensely working on them. So tell me, what have you done and how it's worked for you? Has any one of you guys done the first strategy, just reviewing your day and doing a bit of self-editing? Yes?
Yes.
And how was it?
Good.
It's good.
Yeah?
It was, the advice that you'd given us was to try and talk in third person,
Yeah.
which was awkward and strange to do, but actually even the act of doing that helped sort of disentangle the day from how I still felt about it. I was still feeling a bit frustrated about it, so the fact that I had to keep reminding myself to talk about it in the third person actually helped me remove myself from the frustration in a way.
Perfect.
So that was quite good.
Perfect, because
I
if you...
underestimated how useful that would be. So.
Yeah. Strategy 2, which was talking to your inner coach. Has anyone done that?
Yes.
That was A to B one, yes?
That was
No, that
strategy
was-
3 on our sheet.
Sorry?
Yeah, it's three amounts.
B? Okay, B. Strategy B. So basically talking to your inner coach.
Yeah, I used a friend of mine who is my mentor, but he's not always there, so it'd be really handy to have him there when he's not.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And
that
did you
works.
manage to get him into your
Yeah,
mind?
definitely. Yeah.
Nice. Did it help you? How did it work for you?
It calms me. Quietens my mind, definitely.
Yeah.
He's quite the opposite. So yeah, it really helped.
Nice. Nice. Anyone else was doing that strategy?
In a coach.
Yes.
That one? Yes, I did. It was very, very good actually. It identified to me different things rather than the actual letter. It's funny, I didn't really stick necessarily to the lines inside, and I realised it was probably different people that I would be looking to. So there's like a group rather than one. And that came out a little bit later through the process. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, because you can use different people for different days.
Yeah.
You know, for different topics, for different things that you struggle with. Nice.
Well,
The key is to use it every day.
yeah.
So has the rest of you been doing the third one, which was getting clarity on the current situation and then getting clarity on that point B that you want to get to?
Yeah, we did it, our group.
Yeah, you worked quite intensely on it. How did it work? I think you were doing your... Yes? Did it give you anything?
It was a very interesting process to try out because we kind of got lost in certain bits and then went back. But I think it's easy to jump to writing down all of the steps C as to what you need to do. But I think what was interesting came up in our group was that actually you have to spend the time on the piece of paper on A to feel all the feelings of how that feels, and then walking in between and feeling the feelings of B, sorry.
Yeah.
So that you put yourself in both positions and really feel them, so that you can also add that extra dynamic instead of it. It's easy, I think, to be tempted to just think it through logically and think, okay, these are the steps, and just write them down.
Yeah.
It's the whole experience of adding the physicality.
Of associating yourself
So you're
to...
putting it into the nervous system and
Yeah,
connecting it to
definitely.
feeling.
And what I was also advising ladies here was to, as you get to that point B, kind of look back and ask yourself, if it's sometimes hard for you to see how to go from here to here because there is such a big difference and it's overwhelming, and there are answers somewhere but you just can't reach them yet. It's just to kind of look back from that point B, just one little step behind, and say, okay, so if B means that I'm this and this, that I've achieved this and this, and I'm that kind of person, I'm doing these sort of things, what would have had to happen just before that? And sometimes you can go backwards. So when you get clarity on that, go backwards, and there can be 5 steps, there can be 100 steps. And that's why I was saying it's not necessarily something to do within a few minutes. Sometimes it can be, but if it comes to bigger things like your career, your whatever, something more complex, then you may want to look at it from different perspectives, and you may ask someone else to look at it. You may think of people who seem to be already here and what they have done, and get someone to look at that pathway with you and give you their input, or you completely detach yourself, do it once, come back to it a week later and see how you see it now. So that process is a bit more, it may be a bit more time consuming, but for me it's been very useful in kind of visualizing, planning, thinking, analyzing and stuff like that. So I hope that your ship will get to the port.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, first of all, 2 things. First of all, I'd like to apologise for being late and to say that this is really, really useful, and I'm really grateful that I came.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Great, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.